Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Kinnickinnick Native Plant Society's September program. And today's program will be presented by Amy Anderson, the Executive Director of the Selkirk Conservation Alliance. And she's going to talk to us about regional threats to water quality and the Conservation Alliance's work to protect it. For those of you who are not members of the Kinnickinnick Native Plant Society, a little bit about us. We were founded in 1998 as a chapter of the Idaho Native Plant Society, and in 2010 became our own Native Plant Society. Our mission is to foster an understanding and appreciation of native flora and their habitats in North Idaho. And we do that through education, conservation, and the use of native plants in landscaping and restoration. We also have a beautiful arboretum, the North Idaho Native Plant Arboretum in Lakeview Park in Sandpoint. So if you're ever in Sandpoint, stop by and visit our arboretum there. And we have a website, Facebook page. I'll post that information in the chat coming up here as we get started. And then let's see, program announcements. Our October 16th meeting will be presented by Dr. Joey Hulbert, and he is the program director for Forest Health Watch that is managed out of Washington State University Puyallup Research Center. He'll be talking about Western red cedar, dieback, and community science in the Pacific Northwest. So that'll be an interesting one. And then another announcement coming up in October, we will be having a fundraiser at the Idaho Port Authority between October 21st and the 27th. So help us out there and enjoy some nice brews at the IPA in Sandpoint. Shauna is our president. Shauna Perry is going to talk a little bit about membership.
There we go. Welcome to our Saturday program, and nice to have Amy with us. Anybody who is not a member right now, one of the thoughts I had was to be able to send you via email that I believe Preston has, just a copy of our Kinnickinnick Native Plant Society journal, which is a newsletter. Gives you information as to what we're up to, and there's also information for membership if you wish to join. It's fairly inexpensive, as we all like to have as many people as possible. So with that in mind, I will turn it back and just appreciate you guys joining us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Shauna. Let me introduce Amy. She is the executive director of the Selkirk Conservation Alliance, which is located in Priest River. She was raised on a small working farm in southeast Iowa, but came west to study at the University of Idaho, graduating in 2008. She has lived and worked in the Pacific Northwest for the last 23 years, and during that time has worked for several inland Northwest tribes, including the Coeur d'Alene, the Kalispel, Kootenai, Spokane, and Confederate tribes of the Colville Reservation. And she's worked with them on their habitat restoration projects. Prior to joining the Selkirk Conservation Alliance, Amy was the environmental program director for the Kootenai Environmental Alliance, including management of the Coeur d'Alene Lake Waterkeeper. And now she leads SCA on their efforts to protect the natural resources of our beautiful southern Selkirk ecosystem. And with that, Amy, welcome. The time is yours.
Thank you. Well, thanks so much for that introduction, Preston. And thank you, Native Plant Society, Kinnickinnick or Bearberry, I think, right, is the common name, for inviting SCA and myself to speak to you today at your monthly meeting. I know we just welcome any opportunity to speak to the community about our work and threats to water quality and what you can do and what we all can do to just really help protect our beautiful, I mean, truly magnificent lakes and rivers and streams in this area. So thank you for inviting us. Preston gave a really great introduction. I was going to tell you a little bit about myself. I'll just kind of fast forward through that. I am a graduate of the University of Idaho in Moscow with degrees in ecology and conservation biology, wildlife biology, and rangeland ecology. Out of university, I had the amazing opportunity to work for the Upper Columbia United Tribes on their wildlife monitoring and evaluation program work. After working for the Upper Columbia United Tribes, I moved on to the Coeur d'Alene tribe. I just wear a lot of hats in a position as an environmental planner with the Coeur d'Alene tribe, working on some really great projects, a wetland program planning project and recycling projects, and just all kind of spectrum of different work with the Coeur d'Alene tribe. And then after that, I moved on to an environmental programs director position with Kootenai Environmental Alliance out of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. And in that position, I worked just kind of every hat there was to wear with program planning and execution and grant writing and events and commenting and oversight of land use issues in the area. And I also was the director of the Coeur d'Alene Lake Waterkeeper program and spearheaded our newly born citizen science water quality monitoring program for Lake Coeur d'Alene. And now, as of April, I am the executive director of Selkirk Conservation Alliance, which I couldn't be more happy about, working with just this amazing group of board members and this amazing organization that's looking at, on the verge of a 35-year history in our region. A little bit about SCA. SCA is a nonpartisan, nonprofit environmental organization. As Preston mentioned, our office is out of Priest River, Idaho. We are one of the oldest environmental nonprofits in the Panhandle of Idaho. Again, as I said, looking at 35 years as an organization. So our mission is to engage the public in Southern Selkirk resource management issues through cooperation, scientific inquiry, education, and economic diversification. And I kind of like to read our vision like a pledge of allegiance. So the vision of Selkirk Conservation Alliance is the leading and faithful advocate to all who live, love, and benefit from Priest Lake and its surroundings. We're committed to understanding, supporting, and protecting the environment and all living beings found here. We're dedicated to the educational programs and scientific research that support and maintain this rare and exceptional environment for future generations. So our advocacy area, Selkirk Conservation Alliance's advocacy area is the lower Selkirk Mountain Range. Our advocacy area stretches west to Madeline Falls and the Pend Oreille River, east to Kootenai River, south to Newport and Priest River, and then north to the Canadian border. The water bodies that our advocacy area includes are Sullivan Lake, the Pend Oreille River, upper and lower Priest Rivers, and Sullivan, did I already say Sullivan Lake? Sullivan Lake, and then the Pend Oreille River. But before I kind of get into the specifics of all our work and threats to regional water quality, I like to just really take a minute and have the audience just really, and sometimes, we'll ask people to close their eyes, but just really take a minute and conjure up in your minds your favorite outdoor place in this area or your favorite pastime, your favorite activity. And I just want to talk a little bit about why we all are here, why we love this amazing and beautiful place. As we all know, this area offers some amazing recreational opportunities, from world-class fishing, canoeing, swimming, boating, kayaking. Hiking is big in this area. Biking, of course, mountain biking and snowmobiling and skiing are also just huge recreational pastimes in this area. We also enjoy amazing wildlife. Hunting is a big pastime in this area. Things like huckleberry picking, camping, stargazing, and just really so much more. You guys know, as native plant enthusiasts, that the Selkirk Range is ecologically distinct and hosts just some very diverse regional plant assemblages, which makes for probably like a heaven for Native Plant Society people like you folks. I'm sure you're aware that in 2019-2020, a study by Harpo Faust found over 4,000 unique assemblages of vascular plants in our area. So our area just really is special for a lot of reasons. We also, as I mentioned, have an abundance of wildlife, things like black bear and grizzly bear, deer, elk, wolf, lion, mountain lions, bobcats, mountain sheep. We can sometimes see the very rare mountain caribou in our region. We've got lots of waterfowl habitat. We've got lots of bird life in our region. We're home to one of the rarest rainforest types in the world. And this area also hosts, as I mentioned, dozens of protected species, both plant and animal, that can only survive in our little area of the backwoods. So we've got just a lot of beauty in our surface waters, and also our wildlife and plant assemblages that are just found nowhere else in Idaho and nowhere else in the world. So there's a lot of just, precious and rare reasons to be here. But one of the main reasons that makes this area just really truly special are our beautiful, large upper alpine mountain lakes. So in Idaho, there's only, well, in the lower 48, there's only a handful of large alpine lake systems, and there's 3 found in Idaho, which are Upper and Lower Priest Lakes and the Ponderay Lake. But it is our water and water bodies that really brings a lot of tourism and a lot of people and a lot of development and a lot of growth to our area. So as I mentioned, it is the water that's so alluring, that drives all of the heavy human use and growth in this area. As you all probably know, population growth in the region is just exponentially exploding, both permanent residents that are moving here permanently and also tourism. Idaho Department of Lands put out a statement earlier this year that said in 2020, tourism in this region increased by 400%. So we're just looking at just an exploding amount of humans and human use and recreating and development in our region. And with people, as we all know, come threats to water quality. So unfortunately, too often, water quality pollution goes hand in hand with many of our common and essential land uses like agriculture, ranching, development, transportation, forestry. And all of these land uses really have the potential to negatively impact water quality and water quantity, which we'll talk about as I move on. Oh, I'm like freezing up here. Okay, so let's talk about types of water quality pollution. There's 2 main types of water quality pollution as defined by EPA. The first one is point source pollution, and the second one is non-point source pollution. Point source pollution, as it's defined by EPA, is really any single identifiable source of pollution from which a pollutant is discharged. So it's something like a pipe that you can point to and say, hey, this is being discharged from this exact spot, and point to that site. So it's things like hard pipe stormwater drain systems, it's sewage treatment plants dumping, their discharge back into rivers or water bodies. Factory discharge pipes into water bodies are some common types of point source pollution. In our area, we're really looking at, as far as sewage treatment, we have land application and lagoon treatment of our sewage, of our wastewater by treatment plants. And it's not technically considered point source pollution. It's what the second main type of pollution, which is called non-point source pollution. So before I kind of get into what non-point source pollution is, and it happens to be the greatest threat to global water quality that we face today, I want to kind of explain to you guys what a watershed is. And I'm sure most of you probably already understand, but just so we're kind of all on the same page. So essentially what a watershed is, if you're looking at, like if I crunch up this paper and we're kind of imagining a topographic map, and these are all the mountain ranges that lie within our area. If I'm a drop of water and I land on this side of the mountain range, I'm going to flow down to the lowest point in the environment, which is always your rivers, lakes, and streams. And so if I'm a drop and land on this side, I'll run into Lake Pend Oreille. If I'm a drop of water and I land on this side of the mountain range, I'm going to flow into Priest Lake. So it's essentially just an area of land that drains into a particular lake, river, stream. So that's what a watershed is. So we have, Pend Oreille, Lake Pend Oreille has its own watershed, Priest Lake has its own watershed. And again, that water is always going to flow to the lowest point in the environment, which is always your lakes and rivers and streams. So what non-point source pollution is as rainfall and snow melt move through the ground and over the ground, it carries and picks up with it all the stuff and materials that we have on the surface. So things like fertilizers and gases and oils and soaps and pesticides and herbicides, all that stuff is being picked up, and also it leaches out through groundwater as well, and enters into our bodies. And because we're looking at this whole watershed draining into this little lake or river or stream, it equals a vast amount of what's called bioaccumulation of pollutants. So we have a vast area, but we only have a little, Priest Lake little area, and all of those pollutants are biomagnifying in that water body. So again, examples of non-point solution are oil and grease from cars, fertilizers, animal waste washing into rivers and streams, human waste, logging practices, loosening sediments that run into our rivers and streams. And as I mentioned earlier, non-point source pollution is the #1 greatest threat to global water quality that we face today, because it's essentially system-wide. It's coming from everywhere. It's super hard to regulate, like that point source pollution, where EPA knows, hey, this is being discharged here. We'll keep sampling and keep an eye on that water quality. Non-point source pollution, you don't have control over, essentially. And it's also collective. It's up to all of us. I mean, it's all of our land uses and what we do on the land as well. So, all right. So when all of this stuff enters our water bodies, it's looking at it will impact as it biomagnifies and keeps building up fish and wildlife, recreational activities in the water. People aren't going to want to swim in polluted waters. It affects fishing. It affects tourism. It also greatly impacts property values. A study done in Coeur d'Alene Lake a few years back, and it was based on an invasive species in the water body, showed that poor water quality depressed home sales by 13%, which equaled out to about $65,000 per property. So it also impacts property values as well, and most definitely will impact our drinking water. A lot of people in our region get their drinking water from surface waters. I know in the Kootenai County area, we have a great Spokane Valley Rathdrum Prairie aquifer that's really susceptible to pollution. So how exactly is it impacting our fish and wildlife and water quality? So sediments that are entering into the system from development and other land uses impact light penetration in streams and lakes. They also increase temperatures, and it also is clogging the gills of fish and aquatic invertebrates and makes it really hard for these animals to live in the water. Nutrients is a big one. So nutrients are found, and in particular, nitrogen and phosphorus are just found just about everywhere. They're in sediments and soils, they're in soaps and shampoos, they're in, fertilizers, they're in just about, they're in our wastewater. Treated wastewater is full of nitrogen and potassium. So you can find nutrients in various forms entering into the system all over the place. so system-wide. But nutrients are really important because, especially for our bodies, because nutrients act as a fertilizer for our aquatic plants. So if you guys can think of, if you've ever gardened, you know, when you buy a bag of soil, it has 3 numbers on the front of it. So those 3 numbers are the nutrients that plants need to survive and live, and the nutrients they need the most. And that's nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. And so when you have an excess of those nutrients entering into any of our water bodies, you're basically just fertilizing the aquatic plants that live in those water bodies. So we could be talking about native plants. We could also be talking about invasives like Eurasian water milfoil, or toxic blue-green algae, cyanobacteria. We're just feeding those plant populations which are very happy, and they grow vigorously, and you have just big huge blooms of algae and big huge populations of Eurasian water milfoil, and it's all because of the nutrients, the excessive amount of nutrients that are flowing into our systems, our water systems. Interestingly enough, as those plant populations, they throughout the season they go really strong and robust, and you have a huge population of, say, Eurasian water milfoil. Well, at the end of the season, when those plants die and sink to the bottom of the water, the microorganisms that are decomposing them are using up dissolved oxygen in the process of decomposition, and so lowering dissolved oxygen levels in our water bodies, which, as you know, fish need dissolved oxygen, aquatic invertebrates need oxygen to survive. So it really, these nutrients entering into the system can really impact water quality and aquatic life on many levels. So, and we also know, so if you see an increase in aquatic plants and algae in a lake or river system, especially with our upper alpine mountain lakes that are naturally kind of nutrient deficient, that's why they're clear and blue, is because they don't have plants growing in them, which means they don't have a lot of nutrients entering in the system. Because those plants are there, they're just being limited by the amount of nutrients that are entering in the system. But if you do see an increase in the aquatic plant populations, it's a direct indicator of sediment and nutrient pollution. So, you see that it goes hand in hand. So we know something is off with the balance of the nutrients entering in the system. Another thing we have to be aware of is toxins entering the system. Oil and gas, etc., can really impact aquatic life, and also can contaminate and pollute drinking water supplies. Bacteria and pathogens are another issue we have to keep an eye on, from things like wastewater drain fields and dumping stormwater draining directly into our water bodies. There's nothing filtering that stormwater, so it's carrying with it animal waste and gas and oil and nutrients and everything that's on the on those impervious surfaces that run down those storm drains are draining directly into our water bodies. But especially with bacteria and pathogens, it can really negatively impact humans that come in contact with it, and wildlife as well that come in contact with these polluted waters. Some issues that Selkirk Conservation Alliance is keeping an eye on, and most of your kind of regional watchdog water groups, are nutrients, excessive nutrients. One of our big concerns with all of our lakes in the region is excessive nutrients. And as I mentioned earlier, that excess of nutrients is going to increase your plant growth. It's going to increase algae growth, which, for various reasons, makes water quality not good. But I really also want to emphasize that this region and area, we have so many pressures on our lakes and water bodies, from recreation, from development, from natural resources extraction, population growth, and climate change, just to name a few, that while water quality and clarity now might still be very good in most areas, we really have to be super vigilant and aware and on top of what's happening development wise and land use wise in our region in order to protect our local water bodies. Another big issue that we see in our lakes, as I mentioned earlier, are infestations of Eurasian water milfoil. We have curly-leaf pondweed in Priest Lake, and I believe you have it in Lake Pend Oreille as well. We've got Chinese mystery snails. There's always the threat of zebra mussels is always on the horizon, which can really, really impact, negatively impact a lake system. So these invasives, they really just, they outcompete natives. They take over entire systems. They decrease biodiversity. They're just kind of bad all the way around. You don't want to swim in places like that. You can't boat through places like that. So invasives are a big issue that we're keeping an eye on as well. Another big issue with our region is the loss of our native cold water fishery due to temperature impacts and increases. The center, the map in the center, I know it's kind of hazy, but that's the red lines are some tributary streams into Upper Priest Lake and Lower Priest Lake. And they're red because they're temperature impaired. Essentially that red line indicates that the temperature is such that it's not, those streams no longer support a native cold water fishery. And we saw, as you saw this summer, we saw, record increases in our water temperatures and stream temperature, and just record fish die-offs due to the increases in stream temperature. We're also experiencing a diatom called didymo or rock snot. And this is kind of really a bad guy. It essentially coats stream bottoms and starves out or kills our aquatic insects, which the fish feed upon. So it just kind of like this mat that suffocates our aquatic insects. And again, as I mentioned earlier, it is just critical to proactively protect our water quality in this watershed now, while we still have this great resource of clean, clear water. Once water systems and water bodies have tipped past the point, of negative water quality and pollution, it's almost impossible to get those systems back functioning healthy again. And it definitely takes a lot more money to do that than it does to proactively protect those systems. I also really want to emphasize, as I mentioned earlier, non-point source pollution is the greatest threat to water quality globally that we face, because this pollution is coming in system wide. And so it will take a collective effort from all of us in order to protect these lakes in the long term. Which brings me to what SCA does. So as I mentioned earlier, SCA is a local environmental nonprofit organization. Our advocacy area is primarily the Priest Lake watershed. We have been working on many issues over the years related to land, related to air quality, related to wildlife protection, and most recently through a strategic planning effort this past November, December, our board has decided to really focus our efforts on water quality. We have a really lean and mean team. We have, one permanent staff person and one part-time staff person, which if you know anybody, we're looking for an office administrator right now. So we have just 1.5 staff people, and we're really powered by our volunteer board and volunteer community members that help out with our projects and programs. So SCA has 3 primary programs that we kind of recently established through the strategic plan. Although we've always been working on this work, we kind of recently formalized these programs. So we've recently formalized an education program, a scientific research program, and an advocacy program. Our education program really just strives to educate the public on environmental issues of concern that are going to have negative impacts on area, land, water, wildlife. And so we work to educate you so that we can kind of collectively put pressure on our local agencies and land managers to make better decisions with regard to land use. We do a lot of, through our education program, we do a lot of public talks and lectures. We speak at community events and try to participate in festivals and things like that in the area. We also work really hard to educate the community through our social media platforms. So through our Facebook, through our website. We also have a biannual educational newsletter that's called Sightlines that comes out twice a year. And then we're really working hard to just educate the public through our local media and put out press releases, educational press releases on various topics that are going on in the region. We are looking to expand our education program. This year, we'd like to just grow the community groups that we talk to. So if you're part of another group or know anyone who might be interested in kind of having an SCA talk, we're more than happy to oblige and come out and speak the gospel of SCA and talk about water quality and what we all can do to protect it collectively. We're also looking to grow our in-school education work. So we'd like to do more targeted in-school, just supplementary environmental education in the form of water quality talks. But we're starting off by forming a high school level environmental club. So my thought is I get this high school level environmental club and then we can kind of do more outreach to our elementary and lower grade schools. So we are working on starting a high school level environmental club for our region, but we continue to grow our education program, and we hope that we'll, that program will just continue to grow annually with new projects. Our second pillar program is our scientific research program. I'm very just proud and just think we've got 3 really great citizen science water quality monitoring programs up and running. Our water quality monitoring programs are looking at collecting data on aquatic vegetation growth in our bays. So this picture on the far left over here, we essentially had folks hang a substrate off of their dock that vegetation was able to grow on. So you could see which bays had the most nutrients coming into them by the amount of aquatic plant growth that grew on these little substrate tiles. So that's an aquatic vegetation plant growth study that we've worked on that's kind of being tabled right now, but it's still in the works. We have 2 very active water quality monitoring programs. One is our lake water quality monitoring program, which is looking at temperature, nutrients and sediments, and dissolved oxygen. We have 16 sites in our lake monitoring program and this is for Priest Lake. And we monitor 8 sites per year. So we alternate our sites per year for our lake monitoring work. And it's mostly in lake bays. We do have 2 deep water sites that we're looking at, but we're mostly doing our monitoring in lake bays for Priest Lake. We also have a really great, and so we've been, just to reverse, our lake monitoring program started in 2008. So we've been collecting lake water quality monitoring data for quite a while now. Our stream water quality monitoring program is relatively new within the past 3 years. We do have 13 stream sites that we're sampling, mostly all on the east side of Priest Lake. And we do have a really great Adopt a Stream program. So if you're interested, if you have a stream in your area that you're interested in adopting, it's $250 from the lower right. That little piece of equipment is called a tidbit, and it collects temperature data. And we go out several times a year and we'll upload all the temperature data that this logger has been collecting in that stream stretch for the past, however many months. But if you're interested in adopting a stream, these tidbits are $250, and we can kind of add a new stream to our program based on your interest in funding that purchase of a tidbit. So that is our scientific research program right now, with our 3 citizen science water quality monitoring programs going. And those are all always open to the public. If you're interested in helping out and coming out on the water quality monitoring boat with us, if you're interested in hanging one of those vegetation substrate growth tiles off of your dock, we'd be happy to add you to that program as well. But these are all, again, we have a tiny staff. It's all powered by the people, volunteers. None of these people that are out there are getting paid. They're just doing it for the love of Priest and Priest River and our local water bodies. Our next pillar program is our advocacy program. So as I mentioned earlier, all of our education work and it all leads to advocacy, right? So what we really are truly working to educate the public so we can collectively put pressure on these regulatory agencies to, just ensure that they're making informed land use decisions that aren't going to negatively impact our air, water, wildlife, land, and forests. The historical outcome of increased public oversight has always just been better land use management of our shared resources. So when I say advocacy program, it takes the form of public sign-on letters and comment letters to regulatory agencies. It takes the form of those press releases to the community. We have petitions that we put on our website for various land use activities that are going on that folks can sign. And then it also takes the form of boots on the ground cleanup events and restoration projects. So as I just mentioned, the historic outcome of increased public oversight has always been better management and stewardship of our shared resources. So I can't emphasize enough just how much of a role citizens play in land use management. A lot of these agencies are often tasked with scoping the public and getting our input on projects and programs. And if there's not a lot of public, push for something, it doesn't happen, and vice versa. So citizens and our voice, we really do play a critical role in natural resources management and oversight. And in closing, I just want to say that, human impact on our lakes are inevitable. Like, we can't stop people coming to this area. We just have to do a better job and be aware and manage it now, so that we can just continue to have it for the long term. I also just really want to emphasize that the economic prosperity of our region is directly tied to the health of our not only our surface waters, but our groundwater as well. One of the county commissioners in Kootenai County is always saying that this area is going to live or die by the health of the lake, and it truly will. That's why people come here, is because we have these beautiful alpine lakes. And if those aren't beautiful and pristine anymore, it will affect the economic prosperity of our region. And then, as I've mentioned several times in this talk, it will take a collective effort by all of us. It's our biggest source of pollution is non-point pollution. It comes system-wide. As I've said again several times, it's all of our activities on the land, and those activities biomagnifying in our water bodies. So it will take a collective effort by all of us. And with that, I would just like to, if you aren't a member of SCA, I can't encourage you enough to join us as a member. It doesn't cost very much. There's definitely power in numbers. When we put comment letters out with the force of hundreds of community members behind us, it means something to our local officials. So there's definitely power in numbers, and we just encourage you all to join and check out our website and tell your friends about us. So with that, any questions or comments?
Hey, Amy. We used typically we use the chat function for questions. So if anyone
Okay,
has a question for Amy,
I'm
pop
gonna
it in there, and there's one already there.
stop share and look at the chat. Okay. Is there any way to restore those streams? Stream restoration is definitely possible. It's a huge amount of funding. It's also cooperation by, so the west side of Priest is managed by the U.S. Forest Service, and then the east side of Priest is managed by the state of Idaho. So there's different management agencies. The U.S. Forest Service has to abide by NEPA, which means an environmental assessment, potentially an environmental impact statement. The state of Idaho is a whole different story. They don't have to abide by any kind of like environmental oversight process. They do have regulations on the books to protect riparian areas and various things, but takes a collective management effort. It takes a lot of money, but it is possible. And the main thing with the streams and the temperature issue is the deforestation that's going on. So if you don't have, so when you log and you take trees out of an area, that root system that was once holding in those soils and sediments is no longer there. So when you have a rain event, a lot of that sediment and nutrients is running into our local streams. So it's lowering the streams, and which increases water temperature. And another issue that we're looking at is the denuding of riparian areas. So when you take out the vegetation that are along streams that are providing shade and cover to those streams, which are, is cooling the streams, it's just gonna continue to warm up. So it's the filling of streams with sediment and then the loss of the shading overstory. Next, I hope that answers your question. And my next question is, do you have, okay, good. Do you have a conservation corps for kids? I'm not sure what a conservation corps is, but I kind of get the gist of it. But no, that's something that really with our education program, I so want to dive more into doing that supplementary environmental education with our our elementary school kids and upper grade kids, and just get out there with the youth and do that educate, kind of more on the get them while they're young type of education. So we'd be open to that. I mean, again, and this is all public powered. If you guys have these great ideas or energy to power them, please contact us. We'd be happy to help.
Yeah, I grew up in Florida and we did conservation corps every summer. Kids.
I love that idea.
Great.
And I'm sure it instilled, just more of a respect and love of your, natural resources as a child.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Where do you send the scientific research data? So we share our data with DEQ. We potentially will be, so this fall, we're going to really dive into the what's, where's, and whys of our citizen science projects. Currently, we do share information with Idaho DEQ, but I would like to expand that and have our data readily available on our website, and also share it with USGS, with Panhandle Health, and some other entities as well. And then also fish and game, because it definitely impacts fisheries, the data that we're gathering. Oh, I knew this question was coming. So where does SCA stand on the proposed cold water bypass? So SCA is not a reactionary organization. Our plan is to take the report that is coming out next week and really do a deep dive into the science of that report and the science behind the science of that report, and collectively with our board and just folks that we consult, come up with an organizational position on the bypass. But until we see the science and know the potential impacts, both short and long term, we don't have official position.
Amy, could you explain to people who may not know what the bypass is about?
So the bypass is all about protecting and, according to Fish and Game, increasing the native cold water fishery in Priest River. And it's essentially a big, long 2-mile or mile, like 5-foot wide pipe that would be kind of injected into Priest Lake, and then flow that cold water from the lower levels of Priest Lake would be siphoned into Priest River, lowering the temperature and increasing the flow of Priest River. So that's essentially what the bypass is.
It's kind of a fish ladder for water then.
Yep, it's basically like a straw into the cold water of lower Lake Priest Lake, and emptying out into Priest River. But it's a huge, I mean, it'll be a huge, it's a made solution to the fisheries issue with Priest River. And it'll be a huge, massive project, that's for sure, if it's funded. But this is an example of how the people can really impact what happens with this bypass. Like, if the people want it, most likely it'll happen. If the people don't want it, most likely it won't happen. Fish and Game relies on us to give them a solid direction to, what does the community want before they put millions of dollars into a project, and before, they move any kind of ground. They're looking for feedback from the community. So, show the last page of our contact information. I'll share my screen. If I share my screen again, I can't read the questions, but I'll just let you read them to me, Preston, if that's okay.
Sure.
So I had somebody ask me to share my screen again. Can you guys see that contact info?
Yes, we
Okay.
can. There was a question here about sharing your data with the public. Do you have a consultation outreach with property owners
Thanks, Amy.
along the lake?
I'm sorry, Preston, what was that?
It was, do you share your data with the public, and do you have an consultation outreach with property owners along the lake?
We want to share our data with the public. I'm kind of in the process of updating our website, and part of our updates will be having a data library that the public can, and of course, the caveat, it's citizen science work, but we do, have a lot of quality assurance things in place to ensure that we're collecting quality data, but we do want to make it available to the public. And as far as consultations with landowners, I'd be definitely willing to talk to individual landowners anytime. It's more along the lines of we do talks to like the cabin owners associations and the Beaver Creek cabin owner folks and the Priest Lake cabin owner folks, kind of big group talks.
Okay.
Thanks, Amy. You can go back to chat. I just wanted to get your information.
Okay.
Any other questions for Amy before we launch the poll questions for the audience? Hope you'll stick around and answer those. Okay, I don't see anything else come in. Let's go ahead with that, and then if somebody has another question, they can pop it in there in the chat window. Okay, so I'm going to launch the first question here. And can you all see that? Ready to go? Like we have a lot of.
But not after this talk, right? I'm working my Jedi magical powers on you.
There's the
Word.
there's the results for everyone to see. Okay. Okay, let's see. Got to get to the next question. Okay. Here's the next question. like I've got well, almost unanimous. Okay. Right. Most of us felt that the subject was interesting. And let's see, here's question number 3. Okay. And I should say these are anonymously answered, so no one has to worry about what they.
Yeah, no, it's great for me to get this kind of feedback.
Okay, sure.
I know it's not a glamorous topic, but it's definitely you know, a pressing topic for our area. Well, really everywhere.
Okay, I think we've got, let's see, 2 more to go. Okay, and that one, and everybody see the results there. One more here.
Rosie.
Okay, I think we've got that completed, so that's share those results with everybody. Okay, that's great. Thank you for everyone for participating in that. Let's see. Oh, here's another question that came in, Amy. Is SCA participating in the upcoming Northwest Citizen and Community Science Summit?
You know, I just found out about that. I was on a webinar, citizen science webinar the other day, and I was like, what? Pacific Northwest citizen science. And so I just contacted Janice Elvidge to see if we can get SCA a presentation up.
Great, that'd be great. Yes.
Yeah.
I think I'm looking forward to that one too.
I know, it's funny when you're like, you see stuff like that, like, what? We would fit perfectly within that.
Absolutely.
Citizen Science Summit.
Any other questions for Amy? Before we sign off and get on with our day. Looks like we've got it.
Thank you, Amy. This is Pat Myers. Good
Yeah,
Thank
presentation.
you guys. Thank you.
Anybody want to come up?
Thanks, Amy.
It's been an honor. I think I'm gonna, actually, I was talking to Preston about this, but I would like to join the Kinnickinnick Native Plant Society. So hopefully you'll see more of me on just like the membership realm.
Great. We welcome you and anyone else who wishes to join. So I think we're getting a few more thank yous on our chat, and
That's fine.
I don't see anything else. So Amy, thank you very much.
Again, thank you all. It's an honor. I appreciate it.
And you'll be seeing new members, I'm sure, coming coming on board.
I hope so. It takes an army.
It sure does. We're all working together on this. Well,
Did
thank you.
you
Thank you,
just-
everyone.
Do you just join online?
You can go to our website and join online as well, or if you want to do it the old fashioned way, you can send us a membership form in the mail.
Okay,
Thanks, Patty.
Okay, everyone. And you-
yeah.
All right, enjoy this beautiful rainy day.